Greetings, and welcome to my channel. This is Sorcerer Tal. You can also find me on Facebook in the Sorcerer's Guild. Today on Magical Theory, we are going to be talking about psychic vampirism. Now, I do have a video on the Cryptid Tales playlist about vampires, as well as a video on blood magic already, but this video will be focusing more directly on psychic vampirism, and is in fact actually a fan request. I was asked how to not only defend or shield oneself against vampires, but how to have a more proactive, aggressive offense against such activities. Well, more of a proactive defense, I suppose. Anyways, so this video will be on psychic vampirism specifically. And I'm going to be dividing the video into 3 separate parts, each with 3 individual subsections. Okay, so the first part of this video is going to be on how to do psychic vampiricy, why it can be useful, why it's not always wrong, how to get consent, and why. Yeah, and hopefully, like I said, well, moral implications aside, as you have heard me say in many videos, hopefully by the end of this series, you'll understand why there is personal interest, self-interest reasons why you always want to get consent when doing this type of work. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to be talking about then, like I said, is how to do psychic vampirism, and it will be divided into 3 subcategories of how to do it up close, how to do it from a distance, and how to do it while you or the person you are reaching for is dreaming. Okay, so after that we will then begin to discuss how to shield from these techniques. So that's why we're doing the first part about how, is mostly so that once you understand how it is done, that will give you a better understanding of how to shield against it. And the shielding against it will be in these same 3 categories. It will be when they are up close, when they are at a distance, and when you are sleeping. And the third will be the more proactive, aggressive defensive techniques that will not only prevent the psychic vampire from feeding on you, but discourage them from ever trying again, and perhaps even preventing them from being able to try such a thing in the future. Okay, so now that that's out of the way, let's go ahead and start with the videos. So, first category, how to use psychic vampirism. Now, we were starting with up close. All energy work is very connected to visualization. Yeah. So what we are wanting to do here is find the visualization that works for us. When you're up close, you're also directly interacting with the aura, and a person's mood will affect not only how much energy they are giving off, but how well they are defending that energy and how much they are pushing it out. Okay, so up close vampiricy. Really all you need to do to pull it in is imagine that you're pulling it in. And some people just give off energy like crazy. You can't help but pull their energy in. You've got to shield up. You've got to shield yourself to prevent pulling that energy in. Yeah? A lot of us totally know what that's all about. So then people, I mean, if you really need energy, those type of people, they're just basically walking consent as how they are, but you got to understand that you're pulling in all this different energy. Okay? So when you pull the energy in, especially in a situation like that where it's just wild energy coming from off of a person and you're just pulling it in, anytime really that you're pulling in someone else's energy, you want to imagine that it's going through a centrifugal process, like a centrifuge, a spiral. and that it's spiraling around, all the stuff that you don't want, all the stuff that could be negative to you, is pushed to the edges and then tossed away, leaving raw base energy in the middle that you can pull into yourself, because you don't want all that extra stuff. And that actually is a technique that can be used anytime for anybody. Like I said, there's some people you can't help but pull in their energy. That's a way to deal with that, is imagine a centrifuge, a spinning vortex, spinning that energy around as it gets to you and tossing out the parts that are harmful to you while drawing in the parts that are not harmful. But what you're doing here is pulling in that energy. And most people don't use that spinning technique that I mentioned. Okay? And you don't have to. If that is too many layers of visualization, you can simply just imagine their energy coming into you. In this type of case, a lot of people imagine it as a light that they're pulling into themselves and just kind of breathing in as they're talking to the person. Yeah? Now, like I said, different emotional states make this different. And there are a few states that really push out energy. Sadly, most psychic vampires, and this is why we're often aware of these people, and what everyone's complaint about them is a lot of these psychic vampires feed on the negative states. And that is sadness, anger, boredom. Any one of those, those are energies that you can just feel pouring out of a person, yeah? And that's what they need to get in. That's the person pushing out energy. So if they can make a person feel sad, and fear. So there's 4, actually, of the negative ones. And these are all states that people immediately exude that energy. So psychic vampires will push a person into one of those 4 states so that they can absorb that energy from them. They will do that by harassing the person, negging the person, so, making fun of them. They will do it by, some people do it by promising things and then and then not making good on those promises so they can get that disappointment, that sadness. There are lots of different ways. There's a show called, I just had it on the tip of my tongue. It's that reality show about what we do in the shadows. There's a reality show on Hulu called What We Do in the Shadows. And of course it's a fake reality show about a group of vampires. But in the group, there is a psychic vampire. And the way he feeds, that's how it is. He uses boredom, and he just drones on and on and on to the people, and they get really bored of what he's talking about, and so he feeds off of that energy and pulls it into himself. Now, before we go any farther, we had that spinning thing I was talking about, and one thing you need to understand here, on either end of that, is that anytime you are pulling energy from someone else and feeding on it, they are the ones in control, not you. Yeah? So if the person realizes that you are feeding off of their energy and don't like that, you are in immediate danger. And we'll get more into that as the video continues. But just keep that in mind. If you are doing this, you don't want the other person to know unless they have consented. Yeah? And I talked about pulling off these different energies. So here's one of the areas where this can be beneficial. And that's the drawing of negative energy without creating it. Yeah? So that means if someone who is incredibly sad and just wants someone to talk to already, well, there's a perfect opportunity for someone that needs to pull that energy. Someone that wants to draw that energy in. You can provide comfort for this person, draw that sadness into them, and then remember, unless you're one of these people that are born with this innate need, because then you need it, your body will already convert that negative energy back into positive energy. But if you're not someone with the innate need, remember to convert that energy in, or you're just going to make yourself sad. But as you draw that energy in and you're able to comfort this person and draw the sadness away from them, once they leave, you want to cut the cord from that and then process that grief energy And you can do it with the vortex method like I was just discussing. Whatever method you feel is useful to you to turn that dark sadness energy and flip the polarity of it essentially to make it either base, just raw energy, or turn it into another type of emotional energy. And like I said, you can do that imagining a vortex. You could do it with imagining that it was compost and then something slowly grows on it, like mushrooms that grow up into big happy mushrooms or into trees, whatever you want, whatever you need to do. It's all about that visualization. So whatever is cohesive in your mind is what works. Anyways, you want to process it. Now, another thing you can do here is rather than producing negative emotions, love, joy, these types of emotions create an energy that people exude as well. If someone really loves you, someone really cares about you, you can feel that energy pumping out. And the more you can get them to love you, the more you can feed off of that. Now that, there's a moral danger. There's not a moral or ethical danger there, but there's a danger for yourself. Because that is very easy to get addicted to, and it's not always easily sustained and maintained over time. So you need to be very careful about allowing people to feel that emotion and then feeding off of it. But happiness, joy, these can be fed off of as well. If you can learn to make people happy, if you can learn to make people laugh, there's a good chance that a lot of your very famous comedians are some type of psychic vampire that are feeding off of that joy of laughter. Yeah? We don't have to feed off of negative emotion if we can cause the positive emotion that pumps out, which is laughter, joy, love, happiness. So, it's not necessarily have to be a bad thing. So we can feed on people by getting them to create positive emotions. And that is a much more beneficial thing to yourself and to the world at large. And there, you don't have to convert it. Yeah? You don't have to convert it from negative energy into positive energy. It's already happiness, good energy that will make you that will make you feel strong and happy without any type of process involved. Okay. So, now that that part is out of the way, we will now talk about how to do psychic vampirism from a distance or from a crowd. Okay, so psychic vampirism, like I said, it's all about visualization. And for the distance stuff, if you're feeding off of like one person from a distance, almost everyone uses some form of tendril. For me, I imagine roots or vines reaching out over to the person and wrapping around the area of the torso. It's the area between the heart chakra and the sacral chakra that most of the energy in the body is coming from. It's coming from that entire core of the body. I usually imagine the belly itself because I associate life energy with the belly. I will admit that I have done this at least enough times to understand how it works. But what you are doing is you're reaching out, the tendrils, reaching to the core part of the body, and imagining whatever tendril you have wrapping around them and squeezing the energy out. And pulling it from them and into yourself through the tendril. Now, like I said, you must be very cautious and very careful. Because if you grab the wrong person and they know what you were doing, you are in immediate danger. And as much as there are methods of, oh, you can do this and that to try to defend yourself, no, cut the tendril. Okay? Don't put your ego on the line here. It's not an ego thing. That's their world. And if they actually understand that, it don't matter who has the stronger willpower, who's been practicing magic longer, who's better at visualization. If they understand that properly, there's no way you win. Okay? There isn't. If they understand that well enough because it's inside their world. You're inside where they are the boss, trying to pull something out. They understand that well enough, you can't win. Your best case is a draw and you don't get anything. So, if you feel that you have been discovered, just cut it. Anyways, from there, we will now... we will now talk about crowds. And this is a much more ethical way to go about this sort of thing. Because crowds exude energy already. And in fact, there's a lot of talk about sigil work being done this way, by going to a concert and drawing all the energy from all the people in the mosh pit and pumping that into your sigil and using that to cast spells. Well, that is psychic vampirism right there. Yeah? But it's psychic vampirism you gathered from all the people around you. And this is because especially if you're close to the crowd where it's happening, like in a concert or at a crowd, at any other type of event like that, you can just do the same thing like you would from the one where you're close. You just draw energy from all around you. And then you can pull it into yourself. And then once you've pulled it into yourself, you can then push it down and into a sigil to cast those sigils. Because that is a great way to cast. Or even just to do energy work. Or anything that it is that you want to do. Especially if, like, you're one of these new age. They have a lot of these new age festivals, the healing festivals and the Reiki festivals. Yeah, if you find yourself working at one of these events, this is the perfect time. You can literally draw the healing energy of the festival itself and all that goodwill that is there, feed off of that through yourself and feed it into the client that you're working on the board, or however you do your clients. This is something that could be used for lots of things. This type of psychic vampirism can be used for money spells, by doing this inside of a bank and imagining yourself pulling the energy from the money in the vaults into yourself. So there you're actually at a distance. So you're going to want to imagine your tendrils reaching in all over the bank and into the vaults and pulling from the money itself and drawing it into you, and then through you, down your arms, down your forearms, palms, your fingers, and into the sigil. Release the sigil, or however you want to do that. But this is a very powerful method. A lot of people have used it in the past. Not all of them realize that it's psychic vampirism. And when you're pulling just a little bit from everybody like that, or from an area, it's not a lot of moral implications there, in my opinion. You're not really taking from anyone. Even some of these other vampiric things, unless you're pulling so much that is having a direct physical effect on the person, you're not harming them that much. I'm not saying it's okay. I'm not the judge of that. I'm not the one to say whether something is okay for you or not. That's up to you. I have done it myself and decided that I don't want to do it anymore. I've done it enough to understand how it works and some of the ideas. The crowd stuff, I've done that many times. The psychic vampirism stuff, if you can pull that negative energy from people, you can also learn to generate positive energy. This isn't something... Well, it depends on how you're... Again, it depends on your intentions. But if someone has that, at least inner consent of exchanging energy with you, this is something we all do all the time. It's only really an issue when you're pulling from someone so much that it begins to exhaust them, or if you're purposely creating a negative experience for a person so that you can pull the energy from them. That definitely has some moral implications. Anyways, again, it is not my place to decide that, but anytime you are doing that to somebody, if they catch on to what you're up to, you are in some serious trouble. If you are trying to create negative energy trying to create a negative experience in someone to feed off of their sadness or etc. Once they understand what you were doing, you could be in some very serious trouble. So, even for self-interest, There are good, very good reasons not to be engaging in that behavior. Anyways, now that we have covered that, we will discuss a little bit about how to feed off of someone in their dreams. Now, this one in particular is one that I'm not going to spend a lot of time on, except for on how the mechanics of how it works, so that we know how to defend against it. In order to enter someone's dreams and feed on them, you need some sort of sample target, just like you would if you were going to be casting a spell on someone. The most easily acquired of these, and this is one that you can use in spellcraft, and actually through a very similar manner as we're going to discuss as to how we use it here, but it's a very commonly overlooked link in any other types of magic, but is well known to those that use psychic vampiricy, and that is eye contact. Yeah? All you really need to create this sort of contact is to have made eye contact with a person and had a conversation with them with the intent that you were going to be interacting with them in their dreams and creating that link through the conversation. Yeah? And if you're creating this type of link, there are a few ways to do after that. So you talk to the person, you make eye contact. As you're making the eye contact, you want to visualize it, creating a link to them. Yeah? And then when you get home, there are a few ways to go about this. Or once you're away from the person, there are a few ways to go about fully establishing that link. You can visualize exactly what their eyes look like and think about that moment of creating the link and draw a sigil. Light a candle, or begin the meditation itself. But either one of these three, what you are doing is beginning the process of that link. So, what you do then, like I said, is you light the candle as you're thinking about that link, and then stare into the candle and imagine that link and focus yourself reaching into that person, and imagine yourself going through that link to them and then creating that same tendril, and imagine it wrapping around them in their sleep and squeezing the energy out of them. You can also create a sigil, which if you're not very good with the visualization, the sigil is a better way to go, where you draw the sigil thinking on that moment, and then just draw the energy from the sigil itself. And you can do that, or you can imagine yourself going into the sigil, and it'll be much the same as with the candle method. Or if you have nothing else available, you just have to remember what their eyes looked like. So if you know you're not going to be using anything else, when you look this person in the eyes, and you do that with the intent of creating the link, be very sure to memorize exactly what their eyes looked like. Because when you go into meditation, you will be focusing on their eyes. And imagine their eyes. And then imagine yourself in your mind entering their eyes, going into them, and beginning the draining process. Okay. Now that one, if you don't get consent, you are in extreme danger. Even if they don't fully realize you're there. Because in this, a lot of times, when you were interacting with other people in dreams, you are in a shared space. Yeah? That is not the case when you enter this sort of dream. You are intentionally entering this person's inner world with the intent to take, with the intent of theft. So, moral implications aside, once you have entered, you are in their world, and it is in your self-interest to never do this. Yeah? But if you do this, be aware that you can't win once you're in. And if anything happens, you need to have a way to get out immediately. Because if they understand that they are in control, you are completely within their world. Okay, so now that we've covered the how-tos, we will now cover how to shield or prevent psychic vampirism. Okay, so the first is when you're up close. And it is very much about visualization, as I've discussed in the other videos. But also, there is a short-circuiting of energies that you can do that can immediately close off your body if you suspect that someone is trying to drain energy from you when you're up close. And that is just folding your arms or crossing your legs or both. Or even, if for some reason that would be too obvious, you just cross over your fingers and imagine that as closing your aura. Because it's not the actual crossing of the feet or the arms. It is that as you do it, you imagine that you're closing your aura off. And you can even visualize a kind of shell coming over top of it. And as long as you hold to it and simply refuse to allow them to have your energy, that in and of itself will be enough, because it's your energy. It belongs to you and it is under your control. So, in the presence of a psychic vampire, cross your fingers, cross your arms, cross your legs, and imagine your aura being closed off. And especially with the physical component of it, because that gives you a physical reminder that it's being done. You will prevent them from taking your energy. As long as you completely believe it, yeah? Because it's all about visualization, and you have to completely believe the visualization. And that's why we have the physical component, to add that muscle memory to the idea. Okay. So, same thing when they're trying to do it to you from a distance. We simply close off the energy. We can also cut the cords. If we fill these links, cut them, or imagine that we kind of fade out and sidestep away from them, or imagine them burning off. It's all about the visualization here. Just whatever you need to get that tendril off, cut it off. And this is we're getting a little bit proactive here, but when you're burning it off, trying to send some energy back to them to keep them off of you. And as far as, well, if for some reason you don't want someone stealing your energy in a crowd, if you don't want to be part of a crowd-sourced sigil charge or something like that you see someone doing, back to this. Cross the fingers, cross the legs, imagine your aura being closed off or even pulling in itself. And that will prevent them from drawing the energy from you. Dreams. This is a great spot for the personal sigil, as far as just simply preventing someone from hagging you, as in drawing energy from you in your sleep. And that is, you imagine your personal sigil as you go to sleep and picture it as it be creating a shield around you that prevents anyone from entering your dreams. Or you can imagine it creating a barrier around you that prevents anyone entering your dreams that has ill intent, or specifically vampiric intent, however you want to phrase that. That is the beautiful part about using your sigil as a ward, is you can fine-tune it to block exactly what you want. Yeah. And this can be used for anything in that manner. Not just to prevent psychic vampirism, but to prevent anything from entering your dreams that you don't want. And it can also be used once, if you discover that you are being hagged. It's in the sleep paralysis. If you wake up in sleep paralysis, I have another video talking about this specifically with the personal sigil, as well as how to make one. I'll leave a link for that here. Once you have noticed that you are in this state, you can imagine your personal sigil and push it out in the energy to one single part of your body. I pick the finger because that's the easiest part. And I imagine all that energy being focused into my personal sigil in the very tip of my finger, and then you can use your will to force that one finger to move. And as soon as you get that finger to move, then suddenly it's easy to move the whole hand, and you get yourself back in sync. And you can step out of the sleep paralysis, whether it's because someone feeding off of your energy. Just a moment. Something in my eye there. Someone feeding off of your energy isn't the only thing that can cause sleep paralysis. It can also be from a misalignment of your body and your soul. It can be because your mind has become more conscious than your body has, according to science. Either way, any one of those three causes, that will work. So if you're having sleep paralysis problems, that's what I suggest. And it works quite well. So, that is how we shield from someone in our dreams. When we're laying down to sleep, we can imagine, well, any type of shield that we want. Any type of shield or forceful that we want. Anything you can visualize can be done there. You can even imagine that there is a separate bed on the other side of the room with a clone of you over there for them to try, so that if someone tries to come in, they will go to that. That one, I don't know. I mean, it seems like they could still feed off of the clone because you're still creating the energy to imagine the clone over there. But do whatever visualizations you want to do through the personal sigil or without it. Because you don't have to have a personal sigil just to imagine a bubble around yourself, obviously. This is just, I give you a focal point for that. And that is how you prevent or shield someone from psychic vampiring you in your dreams. So, last but not least, we've finally gotten to it. The fan request part of this episode. Okay. So, what can we do more proactive? Well, as I've been harping on throughout the course of this video, anytime someone is feeding on you, you are the one in control. Yeah? So, if someone is feeding off of you in your direct sphere energy right next to you, you just simply imagine malicious intent at them. They're sucking in that energy. They're pulling it in. They want it. They're pulling it in. You imagine a malicious intent energy, and then while you're at it, you can even imagine something on it that prevents it from being depolarized. And I talked about earlier about how you have to turn the negative energy into positive energy, and that people who are naturally psychic vampires will do that on their own. Okay, you want to imagine, as you're pushing out this intent, specifically, that it can't happen to it. For me, that takes on the form of like this gray spike with a white curled tip, so that when it hits their spin, it's going to spin the other way and still go forward and stab into them. And you just have to push out that intent. That malicious intent. That's all it takes. Because they're pulling it in. They want it. All you've got to do is give them what they want. Push it into them. And there you go. Very simple. Very easy. Cross your fingers afterwards to prevent them from coming back if you like. Or just keep pushing that at them. Just know that they're aware of it and give them that. Okay. So, very simple with that one. Next, we have the people feeding on you from a distance. And with that, like I said, we almost, every time anybody does that, anytime I've ever talked about it with anybody, there is some sort of tendril involved. So, when you feel one of these tendrils on you, it doesn't really, if you want to identify who it is, there are ways, yeah? Mostly, they're going to be staring at you. They're most likely going to be staring at you while they're trying to pull this energy, or they're going to be having other little physical tells. But absent that, you can just close your eyes and see where the pull is coming from, and allow yourself to be drawn to that. And whoever is pulling from that direction, you should get a good idea of at least where the pull is coming from. Given the time and opportunity, you could use one of my spell chains I talk about in the other videos to trace back to this person. But typically, if it's just someone at a distance trying to feed on you, you're not going to have time for that. Either way, they're going to have some type of tendril. So you just imagine yourself grabbing onto that tendril and then pulling it wide so that it can't be closed, and doing the same thing with the malicious intent. You can imagine that as your own tendril going down through their tendril on the inside with whatever visualizations you want. Again, I use thorns and vines, but in this case, I use a thorny vine. I said thorns and vines, but I meant roots or vines. But in this case, I imagine the super thorny vines coming through the inside of their tendril, reaching to the other person and wrapping around them and constricting them tighter and tighter until it actually tries to tear at their ability to create tendrils. I imagine that is a root ball and tearing at that. And if you can do enough damage to that and make them believe that you have damaged their ability to create such tendrils, then they won't be able to create them in the future. And at the very least, if you were good with pumping malicious intent, you could even, once you actually open up this channel back into them, if you have curse sigils or any type of weaponized sigils, begin pumping the intent of those sigils through their own link back into them. And if you do it fast enough before they realize, they will willingly take that energy in. So any sigil you want, you could throw the Ellis at them with malicious intent, which alone is quite destructive, or any sigils that you have on your own that you have created. Any type of good curses that you know that are just word-based curses even. You could recite those in your head as you're pumping them towards this person. Okay? So you can definitely create a lot of damage this way. You're in control. If you feel them pushing back, cut the link. If you feel like their energy is getting so strong that they're actually pushing back into you, cut the link and it's over. Cross your fingers, walk away. And now, for the fun part. Because this is actually, I believe, the part of the video the fan was most asking about, was what to do if someone is either hagging you, or in other ways, drawing energy from you in your dreams. Because a lot of these people, if you read the books on psychic vampiricy, they will actually talk about coming into your dreams and purposely chasing you around in your dreams. Now, first of all, the second someone else enters your dream, this should bring you lucid. And if it doesn't, then as soon as they start interacting with you, it will. As soon as they start pulling the energy from you, and you begin feeling that moment of panic, most of us ask right then anyways, is this real? Yeah? Because in these dreams, they are going to try to eat you, they're going to try to draw from you in some way. They're going to try to, like, classic vampire dream even, maybe. But either way, as soon as the aggression begins, simply ask yourself, is this real? Because it's a pretty surreal moment anytime anyone comes at you aggressively trying to eat you or anything like that. That's pretty surreal in and of itself. So that puts you lucid. Now, once you are lucid, you need to also understand that this person is in your dream. You are not in theirs. They are in yours. And that means you can have control. Because in order to feed on you, you're not in some shared space. Some dreams we interact with other people in a shared space. When someone is trying to feed off of you, they have entered you through a link like I discussed in the first video, and they are literally within your own thoughts. They are in your head. Yeah? That's your brain. You control things. That is your inner mental realm. So you can do whatever you want to these people. You could even keep them there permanently, and they might not ever wake up. So really, that's the whole thing. I mean, you can once you have them there, you can either begin putting curses on them and expel them. You can threaten to hold them for a while. Eventually, you're going to wake up. So I wouldn't advise locking them in your mind after you've woken up. But you could potentially wake up with them still in your mind, and perhaps lock that portion of them into some sort of crystal or something. And well, then things get really strange. I've never done that, just to be clear, but you could. Once someone is into your mind like that, they are under your control. And that's like I talked about in the book about the part about possession or any of that, because it's yours. It is your free will, your will that holds sway within your own inner worlds. And that's why you cannot be, that's why when you are being possessed, nothing can actually force you to do anything that you're willing to resist. Simply have to be aware that they can't and they cannot, no matter what they tell you. And the same thing within a vampire in your head. No matter how terrifying, no matter how big the monster's jaws are that he develops himself into, no matter how he does it, or she or they, no matter how they do it, they can't if you don't let them. Because it's your world. And your visualizations are in control of the show. Anyways, that's going to be it for this episode, because I see it's getting quite long. Thank you once again for joining me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, please take the opportunity to do so now. Until next time, bright blessings and an interesting fate. This has been Sorcerer Tao.